Should we start? Geeta, Ranjit ji?
Yes. Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the second webinar of a series by QuorumVeda Consulting Services, a consultancy startup dedicated to supporting Indian startups in the field of healthcare, science, and technology. Innovation is the key to solving complex global challenges, and it is the future of our country. We need to inspire our youngsters to become innovators and entrepreneurs. However, innovation and entrepreneurship requires dedication and resilience. There will be obstacles along the way, and we must be prepared to overcome these challenges. Today, we have two esteemed panelists with us. We are honored to have Ms. Geethanjali Radhakrishnan, CEO and MD of Adiuvo Diagnostics Private Limited, discussing the challenges faced by startups. And we have CA Ranjit Karthikeyan, partner at Ranjit Karthikeyan Associates, a distinguished chartered accountant, discussing solutions. Geethanjali is a dynamic and innovative entrepreneur. She founded the Adiuvo Diagnostics. It's a deep tech startup with a background in bioengineering and an MBA. She founded the company with a vision to reduce the rate of limb amputations, minimize antibiotic misuse, and democratize advanced diagnostics for underserved populations. And we have Ranjit Karthikeyan ji, a distinguished chartered accountant whose extensive knowledge and experience span across legal, financial, and public policy domains. With over 3 decades of professional practice, Mr. Karthikeyan has become one of the most sought-after business consultants, serving both government and private sector businesses with his expert advice and consulting. Mr. Karthikeyan's expertise extends to startup consulting and fundraising advisory, helping new ventures navigate the complexities of business environment and secure necessary funding. Beyond his professional pursuits, he is a respected commentator on economic and public policy issues, regularly appearing on television and contributing to various business, finance, and law publications. Ms. Geethanjali, could you please briefly introduce your Adiuvo Diagnostics and share your journey so far, and also explain about the biggest regulatory challenges you faced when starting Adiuvo Diagnostics?
Yes. Thanks so much, Dr. Abdul. It's really a pleasure to be as part of this discussion. I'm Geethanjali, founder of Adiuvo. So Adiuvo means to help or to aid people. I founded this company mainly because we substitute or we import majority of our diagnostic equipment from other countries. And many of these equipments are not trained for the Indian population. There could be a lot of racial disparities. And also it's being sold at a very high cost, which is not very affordable. So this is the basis of me starting a company, and we wanted to work in something that's completely innovative. And we want to address the global problem of antimicrobial resistance. I'm sure Dr. Abdul would be focusing on this quite a lot, because there are very few antibiotics left, and the next set of mutation that happens in the bacteria, you will not have any newer antibiotics to even treat. So the problem behind this is there is no proper diagnostic or screening tools that can detect bacteria and fungus in real time. And the current method, which is a culture test, takes 3 to 7 days for a definitive result. And you know, bacteria and fungus are everywhere. So I started this, and I was working mainly in this problem because we met a farmer in a hospital in Pune who was treated with antibiotic for a fungal infection. So that really startled me, and wanted to do something that's absolutely real time. And we have this handheld device called Illuminate that shines light, and just like how you take a selfie, you take a photo of your wound, and you know instantly where bacteria is present, and also the broadly the type of bacteria. So we have currently commercialized in India, and then we have just in process of applying regulatory approvals in other countries. That's in short about our company and our mission. Like as Dr. Abdul said, It's mainly to bring down the rate of amputation because of these infections and also to prevent antibiotic misuse. To start with, what is the regulatory challenges we faced? So when I initially founded the company, there were not many understanding about what pathway to take, especially in India. And the funding required if you want to go with respect to US FDA or an CE related, which is for European countries, is again, it takes a lot of money. You need to understand and have the right consultants in place. And one major challenge, especially in healthcare, is you just can't assess the market. Even when you have to make a decision, can I put in this much amount of funding for these regulatory approvals? So you're not going to know in advance whether you're going to be successful even after these regulatory approvals. Of course, you will know the market need and all of that, but the proof is always only when you start selling, you will know what happens. And you can't start selling or even demonstrating on a patient without basic regulatory approvals in place. So this is major challenge, and you need huge amount of funding. It's not just a couple of lakhs will solve it. Again, it depends. If you're just a software, there is a particular rate. If you're a hardware and a software, it's even difficult. Of course, if you're a therapeutic company demand having drugs, you need to have a longer gestation period. So all this is a very big challenge. And also, since India is just evolving with regulatory methodology, understanding what framework to implement, the startups also suffer through the process, because if there is a new policy being out in the market, published by the CDSCO or DCGI, we need to ensure and adhere to it. Of course, they give enough leeway to it, but as a startup, you need to have that kind of money, to ensure that you apply for this license so that you are able to sell, and you need to also have stable cash flows. So I think it gives you an introduction, doctor. I don't want to, move far ahead. So any specific queries, I'm happy to take in this angle. Yeah.
Geetha, thank you for the introduction about your company and the challenges you faced. We know wound infection is a major challenge. And you mentioned about amputation. When in a diabetic patient, if the wound on a leg progresses, finally we just chop off the leg. That is the amputation. And the device Geetha has developed help us select the right antibiotic in the very early stage, even before culture results are available, or even if the culture is negative. It's a wonderful tool to help us manage wound infections. And as Geetha has mentioned, entrepreneur's journey is very difficult. We don't know, first of all, it will be successful. We need resources. And then even if you get regulatory permission, there's no guarantee that it's going to succeed. Ranjit Karthikeyan, would you please explain how the startups can effectively manage the regulatory compliance with available resources? Please unmute your mic, Ranjitji.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Dr. Gafur, for the introduction, and Geethanjali for, placing on record what the health tech people find as a challenge in the market entry, or right from the beginning. A very serious challenge. I personally have a experience in this, not from any private enterprise. I was nominated as an independent director in Electronic Corporation of India Limited, ECIL. So during the COVID period, there was a push from the government to make the PSUs go and create health devices, so that this can. So in ECL, what they brought out is a remote monitoring system where health parameters are remotely. It's an IoT device, very very robust, and it could be used. And I happened to take this up with the Red Cross Society, and they approved a plan. And I don't know the amount of difficulty that I had in making that project, a pilot project, work. This would have gone a long way in monitoring the health parameters post-op or during convalescing, or all these things. But there are serious regulatory issues. Even I would say the users will they do have a kind of a feeling that even if the devices have some kind of a recognition or a certification, that is not enough. Doctors like you generally say that, no, I want another certificate, this certification. So it's a serious challenge that we need to take it up with the policymakers. You and I can only, start making noises. And when you want a ecosystem where we make our own devices, then we should have our own uh, regulatory framework where we can get approvals very fast. So this is being taken up. This is being brought to the notice of the policymakers. I myself am trying to bring this because this is a project that we piloted in Trivandrum. I think, you also, I've shown you that. It was a wearable device which just, with medical grade. It's not like the Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch where, it just gives you a assumed value. But this is medical grade values which were validated by AIMS and people like that, but still there was no acceptance from the medical community for want of certain kind of this thing. And I am sure that if the public sector undertaking found it extremely difficult to get all these licenses, approvals, everything, then I know how it will be for a startup or a private initiative. So this is something you and I cannot address directly. But that is one serious thing that every startup will have to work, find funds, get the regulatory approval. Otherwise, the market is not going to accept your device or product, whatever it is. Very serious challenge, because I have seen many people creating the product, expecting that this will get approvals, but failing for one reason or the other. Some cranky guy sitting somewhere can say that this is not what we need, or some variation in this thing can reject your application. So basically, I would give the first priority for any startup to make sure that you're aligned, your product is aligned with the regulatory requirement, especially with respect to the healthcare. It's a very critically important factor, which many people think that this is a fantastic product. Let me roll it out. Approvals will come in because it's great help. And there will be people who are there, who are friends, will say that, hey, when fantastic, this particular product is great. So this will definitely be acceptable in the market. The medical community will definitely use it. But in practice, even with Red Cross Society, even with Canadian Red Cross partnering us, we were not able to convince the doctors in the ethics committee, in the committee in the medical college department, where we could have actually brought down the services of nursing care assistance with periodic and variance reporting, all these things. But that's a sad state. That I don't think that it's just in India. With healthcare, it is there everywhere. Regulatory rules are very, very critically important, and that is where the startups should give the primary focus, because all the other things, all the research, all the innovations will go waste if you are not able to get the approvals which are required by the medical fraternity. That's my response to what Madam Geethanjali was referring to.
Sri Ranjit Karthikeyan explained how difficult it is for him, who is an established and famous financial consultant, to navigate the challenges for one device. So how difficult it is for the amateurs to have a startup and
no, not for me. Even for a public sector undertaking like ECIL, who makes the voting machines and high atomic energy control systems and all, they were not able to. That's what I'm saying. It's not me as an individual,
yes.
but as a PSU, a public sector undertaking directly under the PMO. Atomic Energy Department PSU was not able to get all these things in the way that they wanted it. So how big the challenge will be for a private individual is something that you and I can assume.
Yes, that is a wonderful start, for a discussion on the challenges. Geetha explained on a small startup, and Ranjit Karthikeyan explained on how a public sector undertaking unit has got the difficulties. So, and how did you, Geetha, how did you demonstrate a clear need and demand for your solution and validate your market?
Sure. So early on, we, of course, now the rules have slightly changed. So early on, there was a thing where you can have a no objection certificate. Now the regulatory pathway is you need to apply for a test license. And then the test license usually would take 3 to 4 weeks or maximum 3 months for them to give an approval. So that gives you sufficient time to make prototypes, apply for ethics clearance, and also get the device tested on a patient. Though this may sound like a very easy process, it is not. So I had written to at least 100 doctors about this new technology because it's a disruptive one. It is not something like you replace an existing technology so that they understand. It's completely new that would, it's not like the regular protocol. Instead of using their eyesight, they need to use our device to see presence or absence of infection. And many times, you would be surprised. Doctors will also be taken aback that they would have never thought that there was a biofilm there was a bacteria there on a wound. So it's far ahead in terms of technology, and then you need to have enough, doctors who are willing to take the risk to test it. The only good thing about the device is it's completely non-invasive. So out of the 100 doctors I wrote, of course, the top 3 innovative doctors responded. So that shows that, the innovative doctors are always willing to try. The others, of course, they may be very busy, but, that helped us at least to bring on at an early stage, onboard these innovative doctors, understand what their expectations are, and also keep testing and also ensuring the product works not only in a big multi-speciality hospital, but also in a government setting. So we carefully chose one trust hospital, one government hospital, and one private hospital. And you would be surprised to know that all of them did it at free of cost because it's a very big problem and they really wanted a solution that can help. So that shows there was a need. But of course, when you have to scale up, we need to have more strong advocates in educating others about this technology and how best it can add value. And that is still, we are still working on it, is what I would like to say.
So Geetha has a disruptive solution, one of the solutions for a major challenge, that is managing wound infections. And when Geetha wrote to 100 doctors, top 3 responded. That means 97% didn't respond.
Yeah.
And that is the reality. Doctors are not that easy to accept innovations at a very early stage, especially before validation. But that's how the medical community is. And that's the challenge all the innovators are going to face even after regulatory approval, not just in the clinical trial. And that is a challenge we need to discuss. Also how to convince the medical community. That's a topic altogether. We'll discuss about that in another session. Now, Ranjit Karthikeyan ji, what will be your solutions for this problem? Is there any easier way we can overcome this hurdle?
See, basically, you have to have that market research and validation. You have to do the grind. Know which way, how difficult it is for a healthcare professional to accept it. I know I would definitely not blame them because, it's critically important. The ethics committee, there are so many regulations that bind a doctor. It's not like earlier times. There can be very, very, very serious impact on a miscalculated use of a device or a medicine or whatever. So you know it better. So there will have to be a kind of a convincing through a market research, market analysis, where the understand the need and pain points of the target audience. So the need and pain points, then, you need to, you and I know that there's a requirement. Fine. But where's the data? Today, the world is driven by data. Where do you get this data? How do you validate it? only which way we can convince, number one, the regulatory authority to really look at it, saying that this is the numbers, this is the amputations happen. Say, for example, for Geethanjali's product, what she probably have to present is, this is the number, this is the need that the market presents itself. And from there, there has to have a pilot studies, beta testing, user feedback, validate your product or service, whatever it is. And that is the only way that you can get into. It is certainly not such kind of devices in the health tech. It's not an easy entry. It's certainly going to take that patience, that investment, that kind of a data gathering skills. You need that kind of a specialist, analysis, data analysis, to present before the regulators, the users, the medical fraternity. See, I cannot come to you and say, hey, use this device to see whether my wound has infection or not. That's not acceptable. Nowadays the doctor says that, no, are you sure that you have not searched the Google before you came and met me? So generally, you are not, as a patient, you are not supposed to do all these things. So basically, it's a long grind. Market research and validation, data collection, all these things will have to be done for any serious innovator to be there as a serious player in the market. That is where many brilliant inventions have not seen the light. I am sad. But then, would you as a healthcare professional take the risk? So first of all, we need to understand the market, the challenges. Only then you can address it. So my part is to possibly explain that, or to give my views, how a startup, a health tech startup, would possibly approach to the next phase. So when you go into these kind of innovative products, you need to know these are the list of hurdles that we will find. So we talked about regulatory. Next is acceptance, for which I think data gathering, data analysis, research support, and studies, the pilot studies, the beta testing, all these things will have to be made into a dossier and presented to not just the regulatory authority, but to the users also. Like a medical representative would come and talk to you about a new molecule. This is how you would possibly approach the market to get a validation. So I would say this is the challenge, and this is how you will have to possibly face the challenge and break the barrier. That is why, you see, if you look at in the general success rate of startups, even though it varies from industry, I don't have the healthcare startup success rate globally, but 10 to 20% is what succeed and become profitable. You should understand, 50 to 60% fail within the first 5 years. And 30 to 40% of the will reach only the break-even point, but do not become very highly profitable or grow significantly. This is the data that is available today. So the general success rate is about 10 to 20% globally across industries. So I am very sure that in health tech, it will be much lower. So people have to take it very seriously, make sure that it's a long journey ahead. It's not like any other innovative product. It's a serious business. You are dealing with the lives of people. So the government and regulatory authorities will take it that seriously, and even the healthcare professionals. Even if you say that this is going to make your life easy, unless there is an approval, a stamp of this thing, you will not be able to personally also use it. That's my finding, my experience in this domain, where I have been working since maybe for the last 14, 15 years in the healthcare domain. I know this is what I've seen.
So we need a market research even before approaching doctors for a clinical study.
Absolutely.
Right. Gida, what was that? That was your approach? Did you have a market research? When you approached 100 diabetologists or surgeons for the device usage, did you have any data in hand or a market research in hand when you approached them?
Yeah, so we did a market survey for our product, both to diabetologists, general surgeons, and plastic surgeons. I think though the data showed promising, it's a different scenario when we actually go with the product. So the doctors generally would give an opinion, but then without a device for them to see, touch, feel, test on patients, they wouldn't be able to make a decision, especially on innovative product. So market survey may say it's a $1 billion market, and this is the market size. These are your customer segments. I think we really had a different opinion, even though there were surveys post the product is ready, is when it would have been much more better if we did a market survey. So I personally felt there was a disconnect without the product, without the look and feel for the doctors to give genuine opinion about it.
We all know how important investor pitch is. Gida, can you share your experience in crafting a compelling story and financial projection for the investors? Of course, you explained us the challenges you face with doctors, and that you will face again. We'll find a solution. But we have got financial aspect.
Don't risk losing the photo.
Sure. Again, this is like a craft, and each investors have different mandates, different opinions that and they as a fund they have different way of looking at which company they want to invest. So it's a continuous learning process even for us when we pitch to 100 other investors. So some of the key aspects have been they look at what is your problem and how many customers you have spoken to. So having that handy, having all those documented is important. Second is which part of the value chain your product fits into. Again, having clear understanding of how many times your product can be used, which part of the value chain, what is the substitute for, what kind of money are they spending currently, both patients and the doctors, and where do you see value? Like it has to make return on investment value for a doctor and also impact in terms of the patient care. So having that very well defined was something we learned through the process where we had enough data for that. The fourth aspect is having a sufficient IP assets. Again, even though you may have an IP, if there is somebody who values the IP, would give them much more comfortability, especially these days when you don't know what is the value of IP. So if there is a way where we can quantify it, that is again very helpful for deep tech companies or companies with disruptive ideas. The next point, which was very useful, was if you have any prior such companies who have undergone a good exit strategy, be an IPO, be an acquisition, be a regulatory pathway clearance and publications, that again build a lot of confidence. And I think last but not the least, what investors mainly look at is the founding team. So the founding team, the founders are pretty strong. They usually take a bet on them, and the rest all will follow. And having everything, upfront, telling them upfront about any difficulties that you have or anything that you want to report early on in terms of due diligence, that's again is very important, because having that level of clarity and transparency would really help. So this is from my side.
Thank you, Geeta. Now, Ranjit Karthikeyan will explain to us details on the funding. That's the most important part of the discussion. How to get funding and where to get the funding from.
See, the most important part is to have the plan. You have to develop a robust business plan. You have to clearly define a unique value proposition for your product or service. And have to have a detailed financial forecast, which will include revenue models, cost structures, and funding requirements. So unless you know what you are asking for, So there has to be, for any product, innovation is all right, research is all right, market acceptability all right, but ultimately the critically important thing is the funding or the money that goes in, because that's what defines success in a business. So start in the drawing board where you have to develop a robust business plan. And like it was stated here, have to have a strong team. So what does the investor look? Number one is the finances that you need, okay, whether there is a revenue, what is the assumptions that you have taken, whether there's a market. Again, the data comes into picture. This is the market requirement. This is what I'm going to offer. So whether it is, it stands the test of the sensitivity analysis, all these things are there. But then you have to have a strong team. You have to assemble a team with diverse expertise and healthcare professional, technologists, regulatory experts, business development specialists. All these things will be the team which the investor would possibly look at. Even banks have started looking at it nowadays. Even when they go into a debt funding, also now people are really looking at what exactly is your team, whether you are capable of driving it. It's not just the collateral that decides the loan component anymore. So after these two only, you can possibly look at a funding opportunity, which will have to have multiple stages where you need to see how you are going to progress. So in my opinion, when you have to have a funding that is to be done, there will be at least 5 stages in which you have to bring your business in. One is the pre-seed funding, where you have all this initial starting of the business, market research, product development, prototyping, and this is a demonstrable concept, whether solid founding team, initial customers, all this goes into the pre-seed funding. Only then you are ready to go to the market. So either you have to do it yourself, find your own funds, or friends and relatives, or you call it angels. So there has to be funding in this pre-seed, because that is going to be the foundation. The superstructure will be built on that. So even if you think that, okay, this is not going to work, then that is the stage where you just let go and walk. So basically, pre-seed is the first stage. Then you go into a seed funding, where seed funding will be the product development, initial marketing, and the first customers. So all these things entail financial intervention. Probably, Geethanjali would know that, this is everything needs money. Your team needs money, your product development needs money, marketing needs money, going to the customer needs money, all these things. So the initial product market fit, model scalability, initial customer base all happen in the seed funding stage. So basically, you have allocations done before you present it to a funder. How much is going to go for a product development? How much is for the marketing? How much is for the initial first customers? Maybe you'll have to give free equipment for them to try and test it. And, how would you acquire customers? That is a cost. So the product fit, scalable business model, all these things will have to have. Like, for example, the Cult.fit, a fitness and wellness platform, raised a $3 million seed funding from Axel Partners, Kalari Capital in 2013. And the seed funding allowed them to further validate the project, to grow its customer base. So being a tech-oriented market these days, you need to have that seed funding and a clearly defined method, what you're going to use that fund for. Because now there are trained people who will evaluate your project. So you just cannot hoodwink them and say, this is what I'm going to do. A serious funder will certainly look at the phase 2, where you have the seed funding. So they invest because they want to have an exit as an IPO or a buyout from some bigger company. So that is with that's the biggest risk that they take. So you have to be very clear as to what this fund is going to be, how we are going to spend it. Then comes the third phase, where Series A is what we generally call it in the investment market, where you scale the product up and operations after this market validation. So the seed capital has happened, market, the customer acquisition, everything has happened. Then you expand your operation, enhance features are enhanced. For example, if you are now looking at a ride-hailing app, they started with getting you a taxi. Now you say, okay, you split your fare. You two of you are going together, then you can split your taxi fare between two of you. So adding features and all happens with the Series A funding, where solid revenue growth, the characteristics is with solid revenue growth, you go towards profitability with a significant user base. So from there, you get to know PharmEasy or these examples where the funding helped them to expand its operation, enhance the technology, and increase the market presence. Series B would be extensive scaling, like broadening reach, hiring highly paid executives, capacity improvement, where the key would be to growing market share with a solid financial profits and effective scalable operations. That that will also have, see, whenever I say these things will have to have sufficient credible allocations for any funder to look at your Series B funding activity. So, for example, 1mg is one example where they got about 16 million in Series B funding from Ascent Capital, Sodius Capital, Helion Venture Partners, and all in, I think, 2014. They did extensive operational expansion. They increased the inventory, and the market reach also was considerably higher. Then you have the fifth phase where, you have the Series C and beyond. That is where it was mentioned as an exit, where, you have an IPO, you diversify, you acquire companies. For example, if you look at this stage where Byju's came with acquisitions of White Hat or the Akash or things like that, they get into a market leadership. I'm quoting the examples where, I'm not saying whether they have become successful or not. Don't take that example as a reason for success. I'm just telling you that where that positioning happened. So market leadership, sustainable revenue, and a clear exit strategy, where even today we have the MSME listing where you can list and have a serious exit done through a market intervention. So these 5 things are the progressive things that a startup should have in mind. And there has to be a clear growth path when you plan your funding strategy. So you need to know what my pre-seed is, what my seed funding is. So that is where the investor gets an idea as to where it can go, how it can progress, and what will be my share value proposition if I invest in this particular business. So in between, there can also be called a bridge round, where you can actually from one phase to the other, you bridge the funding requirement, like Ola did it from SoftBank in 2018, which will help you because that would allow you to be less costly, less expensive. And other than bringing down your equity stake as a promoter, a bridge funding with a debt would also be a possible option. So each funding stage has a specific requirement and goal. Adequate preparation is crucial for the success of each stage, and understanding the expectations can significantly improve the chances of secure funding. So these are the three key takeaways: specific requirement and goal, preparation for that funding, and what the investor expects. Then only you will be able to succeed in convincing a investor to put their money in your basket. I think I was a little fast, and since it was a small chat, I thought I ran through it, but I hope that people will take it in the right spirit and plan it accordingly to get the funding needs and be a successful startup or an innovator.
Thank you. One of our main audience, we are recording it and we'll be distributing it various, especially medical students. That's one of our main aim, to make that the innovation, entrepreneurship aspect, attitude, perspective in medical students. That's what we need the change. So for the purpose of not just students, even doctors, would you please explain what exactly is exit strategy means? I know it's for you experts, it's a very simple term.
Correct. No. I understand. See, exit means I have come in, I have entered your business. Now I am not there for life. I'm probably, as a fund investor, as a manager, as a fund manager, I am going to put my money into your basket, saying that, okay, I am going to earn X percentage of return and then sell off and exit. That is called the exit strategy. So it can be a buyout by another group or by the promoter themselves. I say, okay, once after 3 years, you fund me, I will buy you back at this price. I am going to give you a 10%, 15% return on investment. So exit always means that, I have to get out of this investment. I have to unlock. So what is the option that I will have at the end of that lifetime of that investment, so that I will get my money, my investment, the return, everything. So that is how the funding pattern is structured. That's what we call as exit strategy. I came in, I put in the money, and there are people who say, okay, anyway, lost is lost. Let me exit at a loss. Whatever is available today, I put in 10 crore. Now I am getting only 3. So be it. Let me get 3 crore and get out. So it is not about just return on investment. The exit means, you have been there in the face, held your hand. Now let me take the money out. In simple terms. Maybe
Yes.
it's not as easy as that.
Thank you for simplifying that technical term. And Geetha, what stage of investment you are in? Is it seed funding or have you reached Series A?
So I would call it as pre-Series B or Series B. So we raised a Series A back in 2020, and now we are trying to raise either a pre-Series B or a Series B now.
And what are the difficulties you are facing at this stage?
So at this stage, finding a lead investor is slightly difficult because now the company is looking at a scale or a growth phase and looking at more strategic partnerships, and the known investors that would typically not be the right person to lead. So finding the right strategic or a lead investor is a challenge. The rest others, are happy to put in money, but finding the lead is the most difficult. Who defines the terms, who wants to be on your board seat, who wants to, take those tough decisions with you as a founder. Now, finding that is the challenge.
What was the challenges for your pre-seed funding and seed funding? And how did you overcome those challenges?
Sure. So when I started, of course, I was supported by various incubation partners. Some of them, if I can mention, is one with Will Grow Innovations, which is an impact fund, and also one with a Venture Center, which is an incubation center in Pune. So having such an ecosystem was very important because you get to interact with other. I mean, they introduce you to funds, and then you get to talk to them. So the early stages, of course, you will not understand many of these terms, like you rightly said. I didn't know what was an exit strategy. I didn't know I didn't know why an EBITDA was even very important, why break even was important, because it's something that will happen 3 to 5 years down the line. And for a deep tech medical company, you won't even know if you're going to reach that in the next 5 years, because its typical gestation period is 10 years to know if you're going to be sustainable or not. So, it didn't make sense to me, but I didn't have to make all these things so that, as I know, I understand from a VC perspective or an angel perspective, they're also answerable to people who put in money to the fund. So, initially preparing for that, changing your financial projections 1,000 times, understanding where the linkages for your cash flows, your P&Ls, and your balance sheet, and why is it even important, all that was very difficult. So, luckily, through that process, you start understanding when you pitch to investors, when you make a mistake, how they, as or how they evaluate you. So I think overcoming that was just challenge, because I made a lot of mistakes when I pitched. Of course, the investors that I finally landed in was very kind enough, where they looked at the potential of the technology and me as an entrepreneur. So they did help me build everything around it. And right now, I think I'm at least in a stage where I can negotiate during my Series B. So that all those are very difficult, and especially with medical devices or healthcare, when you have no companies to compare to, it's very difficult to prove to the investors that you are going to make money in a big way.
Geeta, you use a term incubator. Now, I'll tell you about a very interesting WhatsApp conversation I had with a senior medical colleague in another country. My question was, do you have medtech incubators in your country? That was my query. And within 5 minutes, I got an answer back. Do you mean incubators means the incubators, the equipments? So that's our level of knowledge. And that's most of the doctors or medical community don't know what incubator for a startup means. Would you please explain what exactly you mean by incubator?
Sure. So now, one thing I'm very fortunate to tell is our country has set up so many incubation centers. So it's basically for healthcare. They have different sectors, be it pharma, be it medical devices, be it IoT-based device, be it software as a medical device. There are different incubation centers, which are a bunch of mentors. They would come from various backgrounds, be it IP, with respect to patents, with respect to, let's say, they give you facilities because you need to test your ideas. You need those equipments which are very expensive. All those analytical tools. You have mentors in place who talks to you about business modeling, how to do financial projections, somebody from a technology background who helps you understand, these are your points that you need to work on, someone who helps you with making your pitch deck, right, which is very important. So these are called typical incubation centers. Now, there are a lot of bioness centers that are being promoted by BIRAC itself. So again, BIRAC is one of the Department of Biotechnology's spin-off, non-profit spin-off, which actually sets up these innovation centers, incubation centers, and also supports entrepreneurs with initial seed funding. They'll give you growth fund, they'll give you commercialization fund. Of course, at small scales. So this helps you test your product and validate. So it's very important, and we should be very fortunate, especially companies coming out now, that there are so many such incubation centers available. In Chennai itself, I can name at least 10 to 15 of them, very good, who support good deep technology companies. And now they're also starting a number of them. Even TN Startup in a big way is supporting a number of these incubation centers. So it's important that you register in it. It's okay if you don't know many of it, but you can always figure out through them how to set up your company if you have an idea and if you strongly believe in your technology.
So if you have an idea, those people who want to initiate a startup, found a startup and have an idea, the place to approach is incubation center or the innovation center. And Geeta, is the support available from these innovation centers free of cost, or you have to pay them?
So it again depends. So they will help you. You can first take something like a virtual incubation in case you are not able to set up full time in their particular location. Or you can also take small bench seats. For example, we were incubated inside Wilgrow office, where we took 1 or 2 desk space. It would cost very minimal cost per desk, and then you can operate out of it. And then they would help us with having something called diagnostic panels, where they bring in experts, doctors, industrial experts, and they help the innovators talk to them, answer or at least get those tough questions so they can think about it. And then through the process, they also introduce to various funding schemes. Now there are other types of incubation centers like the one we are with, this Golden Jubilee Biopark, or even if you take Crescent Incubation Center. Now there are many started by SRM Medical College. There's incubation center started by Ramachandra itself, where they do also offer seed money. Of course, it's quite competitive. You need to apply for it. But once you show progress, they would give you initial money to at least start through, recruiting one other person, and then you do a proof of concept and all of that. And there are various grant avenues. For example, DBT grant is there. There is something with the Department of Science and Technology grant. There is TN Startup grant. Now, if you're a company based out of Karnataka, they have a separate, funding schemes for those states as well. So, incubation center is one place which helps you, open your knowledge about the different grant avenues available, and of course, at least connect with early angels and investor community.
Now, Shri Ranjit Karthikeyan ji, now what can we do to overcome the challenges in all these stages of funding?
See, there is no panacea, you have to, go through the process with expert, like when you say that you have people who are mentors, who will guide you. When people invest in you, then they will also be a part of it, because they have taken their money. So it is about, see, there's no one way to do it, if you ask me. Number one is, I would say, transparency, compliance, and having that honest approach towards the business. See, you should understand that when somebody invests in you, they look at you as a trustee of their funds. So I am going to invest in a company means that people who run it, the promoters, the managers, all these people are going to safeguard my investment. They are going to productively use it. So how do they evaluate it? Many people think that, see, I have deducted tax on a consultant's payment. I have delayed it. I'm not paid it. I'll pay interest, or I'll pay a penalty. I don't have money, so let me not pay to the government. Anyway, I'm going to do that. So if the payments on such regulatory things are defaulted, delayed, then there is a minus score. That is where in my experience, where major companies who have been approached by big value investors have chickened out after a due diligence, not because they don't have a technology, not because they don't have the HR, not because they have proper management, this thing, only because they have not complied. They have not provided for the gratuity, or that not paid the provident fund in time. So if you are not going to do that as a business owner to the government, see, when you deduct tax, you should understand that I am keeping government's money and paying it on your behalf. And if you're not doing it, then you are not worthy of being an investee company. Basic thing. So many of time where big, good tech companies have found it extremely difficult to find investors, after technology due diligence, after acceptance, after signing the first MOU, NDA, whatever you call it, all those jargons go to they go out of the window when you see you are not compliant. So if you are not compliant, then they think that you are not worthy of being trusted. Then you have to be transparent. See, if you, what is the profit of many companies, maybe Flipkart or Amazon? They are not making profits in India, but they still have valuation. What happened to Byju's? These are all things where people who are not transparent have failed. People are, they should, nowadays, it's not a bad thing to say I made a loss. It is not bad thing to say that, okay, I will take another few years. I need more funding. So these are things that has to be kept in mind before you accept somebody else's money. Otherwise, you are not going to get into the next level of funding. That is where the due diligence comes, the big four or the next level audit firms are all come. They are only looking at these kinds of things. The business validation has already happened, or I'm happy with that. Only then I do a financial due diligence. This is where many people have found that they have not been in this thing, and many people won't say also why you are not chosen to be a eligible funding partner. Legal compliance, critically important. Everybody has to make sure that, beg, borrow, or steal, make sure that, the money is paid to the government or whatever compliances. That is where planning becomes very important. That is where this 10 to 20% has been successful and others have not. Build your team. You have to have, because ultimately it is the finance. It is go-to-market, acceptability, data, all these things will be there. But unless you are able to sell, make profits, it goes to naught. So finance is a critically important, which many people don't understand. People think that, okay, going to a consultant, a chart accountant, or anybody who advises, and where the tax, see, not knowing is not an excuse anymore. You have to know when you get into business, make sure that, you get yourself aware as to what are the compliances. At least be confused so that you can ask somebody. Ignorance becomes bliss. But then, it becomes a pain point when you want to have people come and invest in you. So that is where I give a very strong suggestion. Make sure that your books are clean, your regulatory filings are in proper shape. You make sure that your taxes are paid in time, and be transparent. I hope
Very good message.
too powerful.
So, very important message to startups. If you are not compliant to the rules of the country at an early stage, and if you are not transparent, you will have difficulty in getting investors at a later stage.
Absolutely.
A very important message. Geeta, your comments on that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, because you may get a term sheet, but during due diligence, you have to submit your entire your entire history, geography of your company, and you should not be going around looking for those documents. And especially early stage companies, we miss out on something very important. If you're a very innovative company, you miss to take signatures from innovators who have contributed in the project, right? Where you need to say that this innovation belongs to the company, though I innovated the product, right? Now, those are some of the key things that we nearly missed, and then we had all of them filed. But imagine, as you grow big, you don't have those essential documents. You will be really missing out on really good deals. Second is GST compliance, filing your TDS, ensuring your EPFs are paid on time, your professional tax. I think sir has very rightly put, you may have great technology, but then if you're caught in due diligence, I think it really undermines the, value of the company, and they would be more focused on the credibility of the company, and that is not the situation anybody wants to be in.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point. And Geeta, building a strong case with the clinical trials and user testimonials is crucial. How did you conduct your clinical trials? And of course, we need funding for clinical trials.
Sure. So, for again, I would want to say BIRAC played a very big role. We started with the BIG grant where we had a minimum viable prototype. So they gave in 50 lakhs to start with. But little you understand, these 50 lakhs could just go in the blink of an eye, and then we were fortunate where we applied for the next stage of funds for clinical trials using SIBRI grant. So that's another grant that they provide. Again, all of these are competitive. You need to apply, you need to present to a range of audience, multiple cycles, and then you need to be very patient, but you need to plan in advance. Like when you know your prototype is getting ready, you apply for the fund so that when your prototype is ready for clinical trials, you have that fund coming in and you have all these supports in place. So that's how I did my trial. And again, the trial when I started, I onboarded the 3 doctors I told you about, where we had, it took us at least 6 to 8 months for the ethical clearances to happen. And then we realized that you need to apply in CTRA registry. Apparently, it's mandatory, and that took another 3 months. So all this we figure out along the way. Of course, now again, incubation centers help you tell this, these are the steps, and this is how you have to go forward with. Um, so that's how we started with the trial. And with our product, we wanted to do a multi-centric one. So we wanted to do in both multi-speciality government hospitals and also trust-based hospitals, so that you know that your device is fine-tuned for all kind of environmental settings. And no amount of validation is enough for a doctor, and especially a new medical device. We started with 600 patient study, and then you need to take special interest in also publishing it. Again, being a very small team, handling that is another big issue. Luckily, the doctors took the burden because they are doing the study, they will publish the results that they see with the device. So again, having that kind of doctors who are very interested in publishing is very important. It builds the credibility. And then post regulatory clearance, we still do a different kind of studies every time, because um, you need to build your case with each and every doctor you meet. They give you where they feel there is not a fit, and then you build the case, and then you go back to the same doctor saying, now we did the study, do you think we are ready? So so I would say close to 1,500 patients by now we would have done. But it's a journey that we keep going forward. But one important key takeaway point I want to tell you is, let's say companies like Israel and US, they do not focus on building the market first. They first focus on building the science and proving, it makes sense, and having a very strong regulatory clearance. And then the valuation builds up once you have an FDA approval and 40 plus publications in place. So I think that is something that Indian startups miss. It's not the mistake of a startup, but it's because of the lack of funding, and it's a chicken and egg problem. You need to show market, you need to be profitable, you need to have cash flow. At the same time, you need to keep publishing. So if this cycle changes, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Geeta. As you rightly mentioned, conducting clinical trial is a very expensive business. As a doctor, I know that because we do clinical trial of the drugs and devices, and we communicate with the startups like yours. And we don't have enough funding, and many startups struggle to get funding for clinical trials. And without clinical trial data, you can't approach the medical community. We will not use that drug, will not use that device without proper clinical trials. And that needs funding. And that's the role of Ranjit Karthikeyan. Could you please explain the role of financial planning and resource allocation in gathering clinical evidence and clinical trials?
See, basically, clinical evidence is it's vital for demonstrating the efficacy and gaining credibility. So the quantum of money depends on that individual kind of, say, for example, if you are having a monitoring device, then or if it is an invasive one, that it depends on each and every product that you are going to innovate, or what is the inference that you get and how it will impact the treatment protocols. So there is no one answer as to how you will fund it, but you have to have a clear protocol strategy and what the clinical trial will throw up, the evidence would throw up while doing it. So adequate funding has to happen. That is where the government grants, the impact funds, all these things have come to play. The problem is most of the people who have estimated that cost has been found wanting. Once they do it, then they find that, oh, they have not earmarked enough money to it. That is where the industry experts, you need the team to find out how much it will cost. What is the kind of data collection that you need to do? How much is the travel? There's clinical evidence is not just there for you to pick it up from somewhere. You need to have that grind, that hard work. So how would you fund it, or how would you know how to this thing? It's a case-to-case thing. But then you have to go through that. And that will take a lot of study, research, interviews, maybe similar products, what they did, case studies. Only then you can possibly come out with a number saying that this is what, and maybe even have a contingency plan as to if it doesn't work. And I would say that these phases has to be supported by research institutions, governmental agencies, and things like that. That is where the community, the healthcare professionals have to work with the policy makers. So I don't have an answer. If you say what is the number that you need, I don't know. That's a process for finding out. That is why your time in the desk before you go to the market, even for hunting for the funds, is very critically important. You have to have the answers, because you are going to sit in front of people who have seen it all. They have seen 100 investment proposals. So they will come out with the right hard questions. Unless you are able to impress them, you will not be able to get it. So there has to be a lot of study. So there has to be a convincing that, this is the numbers I've done. This is how I pulled out the data. This is the assumptions I've made. And this is how I came at the number. That has to be credible. So if you ask me for the next number or X percentage, we don't know. It depends on the product. But then there has to be credible effort that goes into it to get a calculation done and freeze a number when you go to the investment. Be it your own investment. See, if you are going to fund it yourself, you will have to know. Even if you have a deep pocket, at least you should know how much you are going to spend on this particular head. So that is how you have to approach. Ignoring planning, budgeting, forecasting is not going to help. Otherwise, you have to be extremely lucky, which is so very rare.
Yeah, we need data. So investors need data, and end users or the medtechs are the medical community. And of course, we need data. But as Geetha mentioned, it's a chicken and egg problem. You can't generate data unless you have funds. And unless you have funds, you can't generate data. One problem with our medical community, it's not a problem, that's how we live. We get drugs, devices by big multinational companies. They've got no shortage of funds. It takes $1.5 billion to develop a new drug and put it into the market. $1.5 billion. And large medical devices needs large amounts of funds, which startups can't have. So when startups like Geetha come to us with their device, you know what we ask? Where is the data? And startups will show us if we have got data on 400 patients or 200 patients, but we doctors are, no, we don't have a large randomized controlled study on thousands. But we doctors don't understand the challenges startups face.
Can I just intervene? See, that is where you have to probably be a little philosophical, where, you have to have that feeling of let go. You have to have a attached detachment or detached attachment to your product, where, you go to a big player in the market and get collaborate with it and bring the product so that, you have the satisfaction that, your product has made it big. As a single small entrepreneur, it is going, especially in health tech, you have to be extremely lucky. Only collaboration, partnership, and hand holding by big players with their marketing efforts, with their huge marketing funds, can help such kind of innovation to get into the market. And of course, they will take the pound of flesh. But at least such products, there has to be, in my opinion, see, it's only a suggestion. I'm not saying that everybody should do it, but I think that's the only solution that I see right now. Unless you have big funding from some foundation or government, but then, how much can a government support you? How much commercially can you go? So you have Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Biotechnology or Sri Chitra Medical or everything. Even though they have innovated in the heart valve thing and all, from being from Kerala, that has gone to private players, so bigger players. So innovators will ultimately have to grow big to compete with that. You cannot be any longer be a boutique kind of thing unless you are in a niche. You have to get collaborated. You have to use your industry experience to get introduced, connected to marketing companies, and you can have a licensing of or the product or a one fat fee and take it or whatever. There are multiple models, but clinging on to it, I've seen that many big products, many things people, they believe, they think that, yes, I am going to make it really, really big, which may not happen. So there has to be, the Bhagavad Gita with you, where you say that detached attachment has to happen at times. Then, you will get your funds to move on and, have the next innovation. You concentrate on that. So the Pfizers or other big giants would take your product, and you can possibly be very comfortable saying that, oh, wow, I did this product. Sorry, but that's I know that's not a very welcome statement for many innovators, but then that's a hard fact. I have seen it happen in my life. Yeah. So that's the only way. You have to compromise.
Yeah. You rightly introduced the concept of partnership at the right moment. Would you please explain more about that? How could startups structure these financial agreements in partnerships so that both parties are having benefit?
See, basically the strategic alliances with people whom you can work well with. As I said, there is no my way alone. I have to have compromises where, your strategic partner, your healthcare providers or research institutions or relevant stakeholders or marketing company, whoever. Going back to my early example, I was trying to tell, being sitting in the board, I was trying to tell ECL, why don't you talk to HLL, HLL Life Care? Because they are more into the healthcare, this thing. Have a marketing tie-up so that they can take the product to the hospitals or doctors because they are in that domain. But being a PSU, talking from one PSU to another is itself a challenge. I'm not blaming. There are bureaucratic hassles where it's not like easy. But in the private sector, see, for example, you have seen about that mosquito coil thing, mosquito repellent thing, a Good Night was done by a film producer called Mohan. And, it got sold out. Even in Trivandrum, there was a hair growth oil long back where, it became a rave and Godrej took it over. And, it's like selling like crazy. So it may not have created that wave like what initially it has created, the hair oil, but it's still sold, it's still selling. So unless you have a great partner who can do that, so the distribution partners have to be there, the market reach has to be there. You just alone cannot do it. These people have been there in the market. They know the nuances. They know what the market requires. So partnering them is a very critically important thing. And how you collaborate, you need a legal team. You need to safeguard yourself. You need to know what you need to ask, how much you can let go. These things you will have to have a fairly good idea before you embark into the journey where you can collaborate. Whether you're going to give away the technology, take a lump sum money, whether you're going to take, all these things are very critically important, because unless you know what you want, and many people don't know what they want, and they always feel that, okay, I am going to lose $100 billion over a period of time. But then, you don't have 100,000 rupees to pay your next month's salary. So there has to be a compromise, working. You have to be philosophical. You have to let go.
Thanks for that advice. Now, Geeta, how will you take that advice? Philosophically, you work hard, you develop a technology. How comfortable will you to?
She is going to hate me for that, I am sure.
No. So you wouldn't believe I'm not a philosophical person, but you wouldn't believe that for the past 3 years I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita, especially because, I don't know, whatever he said, it seemed like something that I'm doing now. Because he rightly said, especially Indian startups, only through collaborations and partnership you would be able to venture out at scale. Because we don't have sufficient funds what a company in Canada or US can attract, or Singapore or Israel as well. Because the same company with similar technologies, they just got $100 million funds, just government grant, because they saw that this kind of product can cater to a very important problem. Now, that's not the case, or that's not the luxurious state where Indian startups can be in. So it's very important that we need to identify partnerships very early on, even if it's with another startup. That's the only way you share your resources and you can able to, understand and go faster and take those risks early on with the available funds. So I think sir rightly said, sometimes your first product may not be, as you expected or as you envisioned. But at least getting it out there and getting it into the hands of the patient and the doctor is far more important, and the learnings through the journey will help you, use those and make a more frugal innovation or product, for your next product. So that's how I look at it.
Right.
I learned something today. Innovators and entrepreneurs become philosophers. Start reading Bhagavad Gita, Bible, Quran. So, and that again shows how difficult the journey is. Geeta, did you start reading Bhagavad Gita in detail after being an innovator or before that?
So it's after that. So it's being a startup, it's a very entrepreneur is a very lonely journey. I keep telling that everywhere. Even when I meet these entrepreneurs in a different forum, you wouldn't believe, when you start talking to them in depth, they would go through the same depression, the same cycles that you would have gone through. And they would put up a very brave face because, you don't want to sound as if you are very, feeble, or you're not very courageous, So we had to put a false facade when you face the environment. So you need to, of course, be very strong. And if you have nowhere to go, you would be impressed at the available philosophical books that would really change the way you look at it and the strengths that you can gather upon. So, yeah.
Yeah, the medical community should listen to this conversation. You know, how difficult an entrepreneur's and innovators journey is. It's easy for us to ask the question, where is the randomized controlled clinical trial? Where is the data? Why do we need this device? I'm sure many diabetologists would have asked you, why do we need this device? I can look at the wound, I can give an antibiotic, because they don't understand how you have developed the product and how useful it is and what your journey is. And we have to make them understand, because such discussions don't happen. We are not used to such discussions. That's why we are planning to not only disseminate the recording. I recorded that, and we will utilize a transcript, make it a document, and disseminate that paper in the medical community and the medical students, because they are of the future. We want them to be innovators, entrepreneurs. And when startups approach our medical community, they should understand your pain, what you went through.
Absolutely.
Ranjitji, your comments?
I think it's always very important to know what you are treading into for you to decide. Unless you know the challenges, it's always easy. But then when you know that there is a challenge on each phase, each step, then you will be more careful and more armed with more people supporting you. So there will be more planning, more success. When you plan, I don't think that success is just a fluke or a God's grace or a luck or anything. Success is a combination of all. I would say that you should have that planning in place. You should have that hard work and some X factor, which you call it anything but you want. Fluke or luck or God's grace or divine intervention or X factor is certainly there. In my observation, people can differ, but certainly there has to be that combination of all these things for you to have a successful journey into your entrepreneurial path, where it's not easy. And I salute people who have taken that step and who have been there, successful and courageous. And I wish them all the very, very best. Because only when they become successful, chartered accountants becomes successful with them.
Yeah. Well, Anil, do you want to add on any comments? You are the you work with Ranjit Karthikeyan Associates. I'm sure you have experience. From your experience, what advice you want to give to startups?
No, I joined to get more light into the consultancy side of this, especially the incubation side, the startup side. This is a new topic for me. And since Registrar is more experienced on this part, I also want to join and hear from his side. And otherwise, the conversation is alien to me, most of the things, except the business part.
Yes.
But anyway, it was very useful. A lot of things. Many people are not. We generally discuss startups about their innovation talent, that side. But as Ranjit sir rightly said, the finance part, planning, budgeting, all those stuff need to be the proper preparation and planning required. And essentially, the investor he need to we need to convince him, no. So the data available, preparation, everything is necessary beyond the innovation and the scientific and other side. So I really support enjoyed the discussion. It's very useful.
Of course, it's very useful for innovators and even future innovators, entrepreneurs. This is the second one in the webinar series. The first one we had two innovators, and in the beginning itself we realized how important to have a financial consultant's opinion for startups and entrepreneurs. And we had a wonderful discussion. Kalpit Desai, Kalpit is there? Kalpit is not there.
Just left, yeah.
Just left. Ranjit ji, any other advice? We had 1.5 hours of wonderful discussion.
No, nothing much. I think we covered the entire spectrum in the 90 minutes that we could spend. I think it was very engaging and very learning experience from Geethanjali also. Thank you so much. Because, getting out from people who have gone through it is also a learning experience for me. It's been great. So wish her all the very best, and, looking forward for much more interactions with all of you. Healthcare is something which I've been working with, as you know, for the last couple of decades as a consultant. Of course, I've never been there, but I've been very closely following this domain. So thank you very much, Doctor, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all.
Thank you, Ranjit ji, for giving free financial advice to us.
Always.
Audience is going to watch and read the transcript.
Right.
And thank you, Geeta, for a wonderful discussion and explaining the challenges you faced. I'm sure this webinar will be useful for lots of people, for innovators, entrepreneurs, and the medical community and medical students. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Good night.
Thank you.
Wonderful discussion.
All the very best for all
Thanks
of
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.